First, I would like to thank Mr. Anithapa and the GTA for having invited me and acknowledged me as a woman, especially Sumedha and Vinita. I would also like to thank all the women in this audience. Some of you may be my students, but the topic that I was given was the role of women in today's world. Frankly speaking, the role of women in today's world, in my mother's world, in my grandmother's world, is the same. It hasn't changed all that much. But what struck me was the importance of celebrating Women's Day across the world, not only on March the 8th of every year, when we acknowledge and affirm the woman, the girl child, for who she is, her role in the world, but that we acknowledge this role and her consistent contribution to this world and to Darjeeling only for one day, and then we forget her for the 364 days of the year. Everybody's wishing me happy Nari Divas. I even mentioned it to one or two of my students here. I said, Ajuko lagi matrai hoina, harek din ko lagi. Nari Divas is not one day. It's every day. And more importantly, we women forget to build ourselves, and above all, we forget that we are building the society of today, every single day. And women, as I said, already have a role. And why I say that is that according to the Gender Global Index, there is, I'm sorry to say, there is a disparity, a difference between men and women, even in Darjeeling. And I think I've lived longer than most of you. Even in Darjeeling, there is a difference among men and women, the boy child and the girl child, which begins very early in life. Male children have better access to nutrition and education than the girl child. Even when I used to go to Southern Hospital, everybody would say, "Ke payo?" And I would always say, "Nani payo." But we women are to fault. हामीले छोरा पाए भने ओ कस्तो भाग्यमानी, छोरी पाए भने ए राम्रै हो. Or even our tone of voice. I've lived with it all my life, having been the first female teacher at St. Joseph's. It's a tough world for women. I also see that the male child has more access to education than the female child. So we must bring about gender equity. And in fact, the international theme of the world is gender equity. Equality. And what does that mean? That equality is our goal, but equity is the means towards that goal. And so today, and the other one about digital, I have a lot to say about that, because I have an issue with the phone, with everything that is digital. And in fact, the situation of women have become worse sometimes because of this. But that doesn't mean that we haven't learned to adapt. Even me at my age, I have learned to adapt. My students keep saying, "Miss, you have to get this and you have to get that." And I said, I didn't teach you digitally. I taught you personally. I didn't see you as a digit. I saw you as a person. So I have a bit of an issue about this. But anyway, my request today to all the women and to all the men in this audience, as well as in Darjeeling, is for every one of you, whether you're mothers, daughters, sisters, fathers, grandparents, female teachers. Please acknowledge at least one woman for every day of this year. आज मात्रै हैन, हरेक दिनको लागि. If it's your sister, your wife, your mother, acknowledge her every day. You know, when we cook, the children say, "Yo matre," or they'll say, "Sunday, हामीले यो Sunday खाने चीज." So that's why they go to KFC and to Domino's. The mother has to be a magician in terms of cooking, washing, cleaning. Her role hasn't changed. You may now have a machine, but your role still is the same. You are the caretaker of the household. You are the caregiver of the household. You look after the children, you look after the elderly. And that's one of the reasons why a woman has to acknowledge herself. Perhaps Nepali is one of the few languages that describes a pregnant woman as Duiju, two bodies. And yet, in my experience in the bastis and in the urban slums of Darjeeling district, a pregnant woman, Garwati Amaru, always eat the last and the least, and do not eat the calories required for two people, Duiju. And this is happening even till today. How many times you hear the woman saying, "Aaj mo khandina, mero fasting din." And so I said, you are fasting for your husband. Is your husband fasting for you? Okay, now, I'm not against men. Some of my best friends are men. I'm not against men. But so first, what is the role of the woman in our world, in our country, in Darjeeling? Wow. A woman is a multitasker. 24/7, 365 days in the year. In other words, Nari Jatiharu praya sabai काम गर्छ, हरेक दिन काम गर्छ, वर्षभरि काम गर्छ. हो कि होइन? Again, I'm not against the men, but husbands, you better start working with the women. So, as the woman is not just, as I said, the administrator and caregiver of the world, of the world really, she is the perfect homemaker of the world. Why? Because she is hardworking, she is empathetic, she is devoted, as Sumedha said earlier on, to her family. And she is the toughest person in a situation like sickness, bimar, morrow, joblessness, addiction. I've been in that for so many years. It's the mother who has to suffer this continuously. The woman has to suffer this continuously. The stress, it's the woman. So if the woman dies first, what does everybody say at the morrow? त्यो घर चाहिँ के गर्ने? सन्तानले चाहिँ के गर्ने? When you never recognized her earlier and now you recognize it. There is an English expression, you never miss the water till the well runs dry. Sukha hunदाखेरि मात्रै पानीको आवश्यकता लाग्छ. And that is like women. Women are also the people who help to adjust to the new realities of today's world. For example, during COVID, the teaching was done by the poor women, the mothers. I'm not saying the fathers didn't help, but primarily it's the role of the mother. During bunds, strikes, holidays, it's the mother who has to somehow manage and adjust everything. Women are also in the informal sector. As I was coming to the Bhavan today, The coolies that I meet, the domestic workers, the handicraft weavers, the entrepreneurs or small business women selling food, newspapers, balloons, second-hand clothes, cooks, waitresses, they form a large section of the unorganized sector. And they are the ones who contribute to the house budget. But they are the ones who have very few service rules, very few service conditions. Women are also in the formal sector, as you now see, Sumedha and Benita. They're in the formal sector, in all professions, and even in the male domain professions like the defense forces and the police. Thus, all women are contributing to nation building, whether you belong to the poorer class, the middle class, the upper class, all women are contributing to nation building and to Darjeeling. But how are women's roles changing in today's world? And I've seen it through my lifetime. Traditionally, women were considered to be only homemakers. Ajkal, now women go out. They do the housework, they also do the outside work. Then women are no longer staying home full-time. Women have entered the workplace. They also earn for the family. They make decisions for the family. But the percentage of women in the workplace is still less than that of men, as women still have to do the major household work. Her responsibility is always there. The percentage of part-time jobs is more in case of women than men. Women are still doing the caring and the teaching, but today, women are entering male-dominated sectors like law, medicine, politics. They're in corporations. Women are now getting power even in rural areas through gaon and urban samajas, self-help groups, panchayats, ICDS, ASHA programs, etc. Over the years, the role of women has changed, especially in their marrying and childbearing roles. Women are deciding to marry later, if they marry at all, like me. Women now bear less number of children than they used to before. Hamro bojule 13 jana. Hamro bojuko time ma ama 6 jana. Aba hamro daju र दिदीहरुको 2 jana. That's the way it's becoming. Women are deciding to have less children. They give birth to a child sometimes at a more mature age. Women now have children even without marriage. Education has made women independent. But take it from me, it's tough. It's very, very tough. But education has made women independent. And they are no longer dependent on men to lead their lives. Now, I can say this with a certain level of experience. Here was a girl from a small dot of a place called Darjeeling. America Mazanda Heri, they thought Darjeeling was a tea bag. They didn't think Darjeeling was a place with people like us. And when I had to give presentations in different cities of the world, I couldn't believe that someone who was educated in Darjeeling, they all thought I was educated in England. Oina. I said, Oina, I was educated in Darjeeling. Garva ko kura oina antyo. That we had such excellent schools that I could go from here to New York, to London, to Germany. I still came back. But it was thanks to Darjeeling. And thanks because I was a woman. And so, education has made us women. But business laws have changed so much that they allow women in the workplace. and they give them a comfortable environment. In many countries now, women are heads of state. Our state has a woman. But let me tell you, at one time when I was speaking abroad, Indira Gandhi was head of our state, Benazir Bhutto in Pakistan, Bandaranaike in Sri Lanka, Begum Hussein in Bangladesh. But that didn't change the status of us women. Because very often we women never create or make female policies. And one example I have from Hayden Hall. We have many women working there, many programs like mother and child, like weaving. But the first thing we started was a daycare center to look after the children of those working mothers. Where else do you get that? Nowhere. AIWC has done it. But most government places, most colleges and schools, most hotels do not have daycare centers where women could go and breastfeed her child. Janu sakta ki saktaina. I remember even in my college, we had to arrange it so that the married women could leave early. Now, this is where now women are now fighting for their rights, and nowadays men are also playing a role in child raising and household activities. So let us clap for the men. But that's not good enough. Women have to fight for more rights. Women have stood against dowry and domestic violence. Even in the workplace, they fight against sexual abuse and equality. Child marriage is being stopped in many communities. But the saddest part, I was just listening to the news yesterday, that we still have child marriage. In fact, children at the age of 8 are still getting married because there's not enough money in the house. You're having it in Afghanistan, in Syria. You look across the world, the women are the ones that are sold. So in today's world, Darjeeling, one of the things I would suggest is we have to redefine the role of women. And now I see the GTA present. I also see perhaps people from the municipality. It is so important to redefine if she is to be recognized as contributing to the building of our society. The other thing is the perception, the way we look at domestic work is very important. The value of domestic work is so important. I remember asking my students, when the census comes to the house, what do you write about your mother? And the sapele bhanthyo, what does your mother do? Ke kaam gardaina. I said, I'll kill you. The mother doesn't do any work. Father is working in the office, or father is working in the business, or father is driving. Amale ke garcha, kehi pani gardaina. I said, excuse me? I asked my honors students, who is the best economist in the world? And they will speak about Banerjee and Amartya Sen and so on. I said, who in the world can take 100 rupiah and buy the best vegetables and the most vegetables for rupees 100? Only your mother. And I think we women have to appreciate domestic work as not being low. We have to consider the domestic workers in your house also and value them. We do not have a dignity of that kind of labor. The perception of the unorganized sector, like coolies, domestic workers, female farmers, tea pluckers, have to be different. Why? Because there is no security in this area of work. So gender equity has to happen in the home and in the workplace, because women, I repeat this, have to constantly balance work at home and work at the workplace. Every time I remember a woman has to work, the first thing she thinks of is khana pakaunu parcha, gharma janu parcha. Why? She's working in the kacheri, but she's still thinking about that. So, but there are tremendous social constraints. It's our own society in many ways responsible. More and more women are fighting for human rights, for elected representatives. There has to be gender training in our schools and colleges. There has to be gender transformative measures. For example, as I said, when we started our housing program, Hayden Hall, we had a creche at the housing site so that the workers could leave their children while they were working. And the same thing applies to all our programs in Hayden Hall. We have a daycare center from 0 to 2.5, and then we have a 2.5 to 5 where 2 trained Montessori teachers teach our children. Now, this was perhaps the most empowering thing we did for the women of the poorer and underprivileged classes of Darjeeling, to give them their freedom to work, to contribute. And this is perhaps our best practice model for providing women, freedom to women in the unorganized section. And policy-wise in Hayden Hall, we prioritized poor women and children in all our programs. For example, Ghar Dindakheri, Ghar Chai Ama ko naam ma thyo, Nari ko naam ma thyo, not Lokne ko naam ma, Babu ko naam ma. Why? Then, when we were training health workers, we selected female health workers. When we gave out prioritized scholarships to children, we gave it to the girl child. I'm not saying that the boy child didn't need it, but we prioritized because women need it the most. In fact, when empowering women became a buzzword, everybody was using that. My take on it was that only God can empower us. But we as humans, especially women, can learn to identify the disempowering things in our lives, like alcoholism, domestic abuse, drugs. I would like to end with 2 people that, well, one person particularly that I admire. She is an environmental activist, and I'm sorry that sometimes our environmentalists are not recognized in Daj. She's from Dehradun, Vandana Shiva, and she spoke on the importance of women in today's world. What did she say? Women were left to do the work that was considered not important. Going to war, killing was considered important. Making profits at the cost of others was considered important. That's where men, powerful men, designed it. Women were left to do the real things. Provide the water, provide the food, take care of the family. So Vandana says, the values we need, the mulya kuraru, are the values of knowledge, of how to live with nature, how to care. That's knowledge. Today it's called emotional intelligence. We need knowledge of how to share. That is a capacity we will need more and more in the future. And the more that I see of Darjeeling in our future, in the period of privatization, consumerism, in the period of extraction. So we women, with the caring and sharing that we have been brought up with, will be the teachers of how to be human in the future. Let me repeat that. We women, with the caring and sharing that we are known for, will be the teachers of how to be human in the future. And that is a role that builds any society. So with that, I would like to thank you We women should be proud of being a woman. Not just for the optics, you women look so lovely, but because of who you are. And with that, I would like to say, God bless you.